Good morning. This is Howard Cormier with the LSU Ag Center Master Horseman Minute. This particular broadcast might last a little bit more than a minute. We want to talk to you about something that is a problem for horsemen, and that's fly control. This is called a skeeterbrush, and as the name implies, it is to brush mosquitoes away from you or your horse. It also works very well for the big black horseflies. Many times you can spray a horse down with a very effective insecticide, but after the horse gets out on the trail and they start sweating, the insecticide does little good. So this is made from the leaves of the palmetto plant. This is an old whip handle. You can use different kinds of material for the handle, and then I have a string tied that fits on my wrist. And as you ride, you can handle the reins. Horses get used to this, so whenever the flies are really a problem, whenever they land on the horse and the horse starts shaking or trying to bite, you have this right where you need it, and you can brush the flies away. It also works good to get them off of yourself. And the horses get used to this pretty quickly, so that you can hit pretty hard and knock the flies off. Some of the tabanids are very hard to kill, but if you can at least knock them off of your horse, that will give your horse some relief. Here's a couple other models. This is just made for a cedar limb, and it's kind of rough, but it would fit a child because this is a smaller string. And you need a small leather string for this, something that will break if you would happen to get this hung up on your saddle horn. This is another one. It's basically the same thing, but I just put two stems together and I wrapped it with electrical tape, and I put the string handle on this. So all of these are meant to be effective. I like this one as opposed to this one. You can see one of them is longer than the other, and that just depends on the length of the leaf that you select. This is a tradition that started in South Louisiana. It may have happened in other places, but where they had large herds of cattle grazing or roaming in the marsh. Back then, most of the cattlemen didn't have fly spray, so they got something physical to knock the horseflies and mosquitoes off. So we're going to talk about how to make one of these. One of the first things you need is palmetto leaf. This is from the sable minor plant. It grows in low-lying area, boggy areas, and this is what it might look like if it were growing out in the marsh. And it's easy to pick one of these up, and then you can use it without much preparation. However, you see that this one has some disease on it. Also, the leaves are kind of bent and broken, so this is going to discolor your work. But more importantly, this will break when you start using it, and you will be hitting the flies and mosquitoes pretty hard. So this one would be one that we would not use. As you're picking these leaves, you want to be aware that there may be wasps on some of these and other small insects, and it's just a good idea to kind of shake this before you just jump in and scare up a bunch of wasps. So this one would be, I'd say, pretty much ideal. It's got enough length where you can reach the front of the horse's face. A lot of times you will brush this on the horse's neck, but there will be flies on the face and forehead of the horse. So by using one, this is probably 2.5 feet long. This is a good length. Now, something very important to keep in mind is that horses will eat these. Especially if they've been on the trail a couple hours or out in the marsh for a couple hours, they will eat these leaves. So you can have a brush like this, and if it's hanging from your saddle horn, the horse can turn around and take a bite out of it. And then you have to start doing the work all over again. So keep this in mind. It's a handy tool, but it's something that you do have to protect. First of all, you need a pair of palmetto leaves. This is a good length. And you don't want to get a stem that's too big. The big stems make it a little bit harder and bulkier to attach to the handle. The handle can be an old whip handle, or this is simply a dowel that I picked up at Walmart or Lowe's. But an old whip handle makes a more decorative handle, but this is easier to come by. And you will need to cut this at about 7.5 inches, and then you need to bevel the edges to make it come to a point. And I'll show you that in just a minute. You need an ice pick to split the leaves. You need some type of cutting tool. This is some heavy-duty pruners, because these stems can be very hard to cut, and sometimes with a knife it's difficult. So if you use something like this, it'll be easier. You can use a utility knife, but there again, you have to get in and cut at an angle, and this works better. You need some electrical tape, and what you will do with that is make a whip splice, and we'll show you that in a minute. You need some string to wrap your work after you attach the stems to the stick. And you need some small nails. These are wire nails, also called brads. This is 5/8 by 18. You need just something small. I've even used a staple gun and stapled the leaves to the handle. And then you need a little leather string that you can use to make a handle. Okay, the first thing you will do with this is split the leaves. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to pull these leaves off. And you want to do this on a fresh sample. So I simply pull this apart one leaf at a time. And you go through the entire leaf doing that. Okay, after you get that done, the next step will be to split these. And that's where you can use the ice pick, and you can put several of these kind of in a row sometimes, so you're not doing each one at a time. And if you do one at a time, that's okay. So what you want to do is get these split like that. And that will make it much more flexible, and it'll be more effective. And it will look more like this when you're done. Okay, so after we have all of that split, another thing you have to do is cut this at about 2 inches or so. And then I like to take my utility knife and just cut off this edge and the back side. So you're just getting rid of some of the bulkiness of this stem. And you want this to come down to a fairly flat point. Okay, the next step would be to attach this part to the handle, and I've started that here. This one has been dried a bit, and then I've tacked it in place with 2 small nails. Now, it's a good idea not to let this dry too much, because you see this one split. So if you let these dry too much, and when you put a nail through it, they will split. You want this to be smooth, and this shows that the handle is simply sharpened or beveled on both sides, so that when I put this stem in place like this, it will lie flat. And you can even these up, because when you put what's called a whip splice on here, you want all your wraps to be close together and tight. This is just an example of what the whip splice will look like. I have a string. I came here and I put a piece of tape. I brought this free end around here, and I started wrapping. I wrap around here so that it ends up looking like this. And this is where it's important that this be smooth, because if you have lumps, it will not look quite as good. So you can be as artistic as you want with this to make it come out right. After you have this wrapped, you will end up with some extra string. And the way you tighten this up is by pulling this one, and it will break through the tape. And as you pull this, this brings this loose end under these wraps to make it tight. And then you simply cut that end, and you cut that end, and you have something that is wrapped tightly. You can just pull the little tape off. You won't need that anymore. And you have a string that is wrapped tightly around your handle. So we go from this to this. Of course, we have more wraps with the red string, but you get an idea of what the whip splice looks like. And you can Google whip splice to get some idea of how to do that. The final step would be to drill a hole through this, as I've done before, and then to tie a string on this. You can sand this, you can varnish it, you can shellac it, you can put polyurethane, just to kind of make this as attractive as you want. Again, this would be suitable for a child or a woman. You need to add another string to this, or just use a longer string if you're going to be using for an adult size. But this would be kind of the halfway mark on this skeeter brush. And again, you want to protect this from the horses. They love the taste of it, especially if they've been several hours without having anything to eat. They will take 1 or 2 bites out of it. And if you leave that on your saddle horn, you will come back to just a handle with a nub of Palmetto Leaves. I hope this is helpful. As I said, this is a tradition that has been going on for generations. This is something that I learned from Mr. Teeny Man Hebert. I don't know of anyone who is still doing this anymore. So hopefully we can keep this tradition going. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have some success building your skeeter brush.